and welcome once again to the Credit Bank Small Business Spotlight. As you know, on this channel, we love to put the spotlight on inspiring business owners. We're going to learn their stories. He's going to share what drives his success. This episode is sponsored by Credit Bank, where you can get up to $500,000 in working capital with monthly payments and no collateral. That's right, I said it. Today, I have a very special guest. This gentleman is working in an industry that I'm very, very passionate about. I'm a big fan of. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so proud to introduce to you Mr. Tomas Ortola-Stange. He is the co-founder of Svidanza Audio. Thomas, welcome to the show today. I'm excited.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, so let's
well.
let's take it all the way back to the beginning. What how did you start Svidanza? What were you doing before then? Let's take us through that journey. What were you doing before then, and what gave you the idea to start up Svidanza?
Svidanza started when I was in college, actually. So before then, I was in high school, but I started getting into music from a pretty young age. I mean, you can trace it back even to when, like, before I really have solid memories. And I would talk a lot. I was a really talkative baby to the point of really annoying my parents. And so what they would do is when we had like long car trips or stuff like that, is they'd throw on music and they'd be like, hey, so see if you can, how many instruments can you identify in this song? And it was to shut me up. But I was then, from a very young age, kind of really listening intently to music and really developing a relationship with it.
Right.
And my first memory of getting really attached to music was watching the Aristocats, which is an older Disney movie about cats, and they play jazz.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
I remember that. Yeah.
And that's still one of my favorite movies. But I really wanted to play jazz like the cats in Aristocats for like a lot of my childhood. And then in school, I started badgering my mom to let me go into the like school band, the symphonic band,
Right.
because there were people who played saxophone in the symphonic band, and I was like, oh, that's the jazz instrument, I want to play that. Right. And what's really common when you start symphonic band is they put you on like the different mouthpieces for all the instruments, and whatever you're kind of more naturally accustomed to, they just put you with that, because there's a lot of kids to manage, right?
Right.
So it's better if you go with something that's already, you're kind of naturally used to. And so they put me on trombone, and I was really disappointed about that, because I wanted to play the saxophone, because that was jazz for me. And then my mom was like, well, there's trombone in jazz. And I was like, okay, that was good enough for me. And then what I didn't realize is symphonic band is classical music mostly. So I didn't play jazz until I was like in my late teens, and was at that point a guitarist. So it kind of took a while to get there. But fast forward to college, I decided to go to Berklee College of Music, which is here in Boston.
Right.
And that's where I met my two partners who would later form Svidanza, which is Zach Kay and Anna Cooley. And we were just in the same dorm together, and we were going into the same major, which was film scoring. And we started doing a lot of projects together and just working together as a trio at that point, still just on music. And at one point, a professor of ours suggested that, if you guys are working together all the time and doing things, and you kind of have this collective going, why don't you make this an actual thing, right? And so we started, at the time we called it Relay Audio, because it was kind of like a relay race, like we would pass things off to each other.
Interesting.
that yeah, that didn't quite stick because we very quickly found out that the name was taken. Um, but and that's how Svidanza came along. But for about a year or so, we worked under that name, just doing kind of smaller indie projects and things like that, and kind of finding our way a little bit. You know, we were working on some films and working on some games and just doing some, you know, uh, standalone music as well, and seeing if maybe we just wanted to be like a music group instead, you know. And we kind of uh, all found an increasing interest for the game medium specifically because it just had so much to offer in terms of the different ways that narrative manifests in games. You know, it's interactive, so it's not, you know, especially with music, it's not from point A to point B like everything else has been just in the history of music up until now. It's from point A to point B, then maybe back to point A, then maybe point C, then maybe to point B, and then D, and then, you know,
Right, right.
all over the place. And so it was intellectually a really interesting challenge. And then we also started to, at that point, transfer those skills into sound design and working with voice actors and so forth. And so we kind of started to expand and naturally grow into this sort of dynamic where we were able to do all those three core elements that make up game audio. And then that was around the time that we decided to change names and go with Svidanza, and also when we decided to really go for this as a business venture and incorporate and so forth. And Svidanza actually came because we struggled, as in the name came because we struggled a lot to pick one that wasn't, you know, taken already, and we were running into that issue again and again with all of our suggestions. And then I was like, well, why don't we just make up a word and then we won't have that problem. And so we made a list of words that were important to us in the work that we do, and then decided to kind of mash two of them up that sounded good together. And so the two words that came out of it, one is an Italian word, because Anna has some Italian family, and that's sfida, which is actually, if I recall correctly, it's with an F, but we changed it to a V because it felt better in the name. But it kind of means, it's like the joy of or the excitement of rising to a challenge, you know, and of kind of pushing yourself to kind of do the next best thing and so forth. And then the other word.
Can I take a guess on that?
Yes.
Danza. Dance.
You know, not quite actually.
No? Oh man,
no.
I struck out.
Although that would have been a good one.
Yeah. And I'll share something with you real quick. The reason why I came up with that as a dance, I also went to a music school, the High School of Music and Art in New York, for voice, and we were taught a lot of Italian arias and French cantatas, and there was one song that continues to stick out in my mind, and it was called Danza Fanciulla.
Uh-huh.
So that's why I took a stab at guessing what the danza means, because the translation for that particular song was like a fantastic dance or something like that, if I remember. I mean, we're talking a long time ago.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but I kind of wanted to have a little fun with it and take a shot at trying to, you know, guess at what the danza would stand for. But please continue.
Yeah, no, danza would have been a good one, honestly, and it would have worked well. But in fact, it was Esperanza, which was one of my suggestions,
okay.
Which means hope. And that's because we've all, since we started working together, just had a genuine belief in the ability for the arts to bring not just hope, that's one of the things, but just bring a lot of positive things into people's lives. And that's an important value that we kind of carry through in the work that we do. And so I'm really glad that that one made it into the name as well, because it represents hope, but also the other things that, to me, that, art can provide, like comfort,
Right.
Healing, things like that. Um, and so yeah, we came up with that name, and then slowly through the connections that we had made at Berkeley, and at first kind of at half speed because we were all still doing classes,
Right.
and doing this, but then even more so when we graduated, just started kind of working our way up and doing bigger, more ambitious projects and things like that, and culminating in kind of last year, we released our first title for consoles, which was a big milestone for us, because that's a lot. There's a lot more steps, and you have to really qualify to get up to that level. And so yeah, now we are kind of trying to keep growing and trying to keep doing this and making it more sustainable and so forth.
Okay, so let's continue with with the journey from back then. Um, what you have this idea, you have this dream, you have this passion, you've assembled a team of individuals that share in the same passion as you, and now you get the idea to turn it into a legitimate business. And
Mm-hmm.
as you may be well aware, launching a business can be quite difficult, and it can be quite challenging at first, especially with the need to have the financing to be able to do that. So share with our listeners how you were able to come to overcome that step, that challenge of getting the financing needed to launch your business.
Yeah. So the good news for us when we started is we had a lot of the equipment we already needed. We had just by virtue of already being musicians for a long time. So we had
Right.
instruments, we had our like computer rigs or virtual instruments and stuff like that. And so we kind of ran just a really tight operation for the first couple of years. And then for our kind of main purchasing of further equipment, we received an investment from a family connection of a really small investment when it comes to like the scales that some businesses operate at. It was like $20,000,
Okay.
but it was enough for us to buy the remaining equipment we needed to start working, right? And then from there, I had taken a good couple of classes in kind of just general business management and stuff like that, that focused a lot on managing your financials and like profit and loss sheets and stuff like that.
Right.
And so that I was expecting that to be the big challenge, because that's what was talked about as the thing you need to know in those classes. And so that was kind of our early focus, I guess, is making sure that we were incredibly organized with all of that. And we did do that, to our credit. But I think what we found is actually our greatest hurdle was where we hadn't done pretty much any learning at all prior to starting, which was marketing. Because this industry, and especially with the kind of business we have, which is very boutique and very personalized and very tailored to each client, it kind of relies really heavily on individual connections and networking. And like we can't, it would be pretty useless for us to like put up a billboard ad, for example, like on the side of the road. In fact, it would probably be kind of counterproductive, because we are ultimately selling trust in a lot of ways.
Right.
People come to us with what is often referred to as their baby. You know, if we talk in the arts about like killing your babies, when like, as in, you know, letting go of this ambitious idea you have. And we're kind of like the nursery, and we're expected to help grow and nurture this baby. And, you know, for someone who's never worked with us before, it's a challenge to kind of show yourself to be trustworthy at that intimate of a level, right? And so our first couple of years, it was our clients were people that we had already worked with through just chance, you know, like that we had done a small kind of like student project with them or something, and now they were trying to go for something bigger. That's how we got Gubin Balloons, which is one of our bigger releases on consoles. That's how we ended up with Time Turned, which is another game that we released that had a lot of traction, and so, you know, I guess our focus for the past about year or so has been in kind of how do we show to people not just that we're reliable professionally, but also that we're reliable, I guess, emotionally, because we deal in emotions, right? And so that has to be just as strong.
So is that what you would say is, you know, one of the biggest hurdles or challenges in the business, especially when you were starting off?
Especially starting off, because I think, you know, the more as you build a reputation, that can kind of precede you, and, you know, as with, you know, the typical way a reputation would work, you know, do more good work, and then people are like, oh yeah, I was treated super well, you know, these guys did a great job, etc. But the kind of I guess traditional model that we learned in school is, you know, to build that reputation over maybe a decade by being an assistant to an existing composer for a while, by you know, doing like kind of small student projects, and just kind of biding your time basically until you find something, you know, meet someone that's you already got that momentum, and then just ride it with them basically. And that doesn't really work if you're trying to start a business, because I guess you need something more reliable than just wait and see, you know. And so we started to develop a sort of ecosystem. So, you know, if you go on like our LinkedIn, or well, we have a lot of social media that we use, which is kind of our space where we can reach a lot of people. But it's also good, I guess, as opposed to the billboard ad example that I mentioned. It's great for us because it really can be used to show a window into something much more personal, you know, the same way that folks will often, you know, like maybe even, or I guess I'll start that sentence over again. The same way that social media can seem invasive to some people, in terms of like you're always posting like what you're eating or what you're doing or whatever. To us, that provided a window to show, you know, kind of what we're to show a more personal image of ourselves, and to kind of show the way we work in more intimate detail, you know. And so everything down to the picture that I gave you, which is kind of my go-to picture nowadays for like profiles and things, shows, you know, my desk and my papers and my keyboard and my guitars, and so does this angle actually. And, you know, so we're trying to really kind of give people a window into the process so that they can have an idea when we actually go and talk to folks, because um, our main form of like lead generation, I guess, is still, um, I guess you'd call it like warm calling. Like it's still networking and talking with people directly,
Right.
right? But when we go and do that, there's a whole kind of supportive ecosystem of things. You know, if I message you on LinkedIn, immediately after that, you're going to see, oh yeah, that's the room that they work in, and like from pretty much all angles, not just the one that looks pretty. And you know, that's what they did on that project, and that's what they did on the other project, and you really get to see behind the scenes. And so I think, you know, that allows, I guess we try to earn our trust by showing the receipts of the things that we do, and not only that we do them well, but that we take a lot of care to do them. And so
How
that's kind of our process.
so how long has Svidanza been in business?
We're on our 5th year right now.
Okay, and how did you make that jump from the kid in the car listening to music, going to school in Berkeley, and then jumping from uh, into games from concert music? How did that happen?
Well, you know, I kind of came into Berkeley. I had this idea that I wanted to be like an avant-garde composer. Um, that was like my passionate vision of myself as a teenager, was that I was going to, you know, uh, whatever, like, you know, 12 tone, like compositional style, or whatever the cutting edge was of music, I was going to push it somehow. And I got into school, and I went to film scoring kind of by chance. I was going to go into composition as my major, and I went into film scoring because I kind of realized that I liked having something that I wrote to. So I would always, you know, even in high school, I was writing music to paintings, or I was writing music to poems. You know, there was always something that I then represented musically, right, or
Right.
supported musically. And so film scoring just felt right, but I didn't really think about it too much, honestly.
Okay.
I was 17. So um, when I got in there, I still had this sort of, I want to do kind of the most like cutting edge avant-garde thing kind of gnawing at me. And film scoring as a major takes you through kind of a very defined art style, in terms of, you know, you learn John Williams, and you learn kind of like the Hans Zimmer sort of scoring style, because they're trying to prepare you for that model that I was saying earlier, of like, you're going to go to Hollywood and be an assistant for someone. So you need to be able to write like that, so that you can, you know, help them like create those scores, and help, you know, like mix in that style, and create, you know, use virtual instruments in that style, etc. Right. And the expectation is that you'll just develop your own style over time. Um, but I was kind of, that part of me was a little dissatisfied. And then I took a class on that was like intro to video game scoring. And the professor who taught that class, Duncan Watt, who wrote some of the original music for League of Legends, among other things, he was introducing the concept of interactive music, and of, you know, as I was mentioning earlier, that it's not from point A to point B, and all the different things you can do. And he said, as he was kind of giving this impassioned speech, he said, "This is the most avant-garde thing you can do. There's nothing like this that's ever been done before in history." And I was like, oh, that's my that's where I want to be. Um, and so that's where I kind of got hooked, and I joined what was a minor at the time, and later became the major. So I was part of the first cohort that graduated with the major. Um, and and then as I was in that, and as I felt, kind of a lot more uh, satisfied in terms of my desire to kind of push the cutting edge, the other part of kind of why I got into the arts uh, started to push too, which is that, as much as music was the thing that I had kind of landed on as my uh, the thing I was best at, because as I mentioned, I kind of started from a young age just engaging with music and stuff.
Right.
I've really had a love for the arts, uh, or rather, my love for the arts, as opposed to my capacity, has comes from somewhere else, and that's not necessarily tied to music specifically. And so that's when I was in high school. I was in the symphonic band. And we were playing a concert at the Singapore Botanical Gardens. And there was basically, long story short, there was an accident while we were warming up, and somebody in the audience passed away. And we kind of sat there and watched all of that, me and all my friends, and my friends' parents, and my teachers. So basically, anyone I knew at the time. Was completely traumatized by that. And I took some time to recuperate, but very shortly after that, I kind of started to feel this like really strong drive to play any concert I could get my hands on. So I played with the symphonic band, but I also joined some rock bands. I started a jazz band in our school, which is when I actually started to finally play jazz after all the years of wanting to. I just started that band not knowing anything about jazz, but I was like, you know what, I want to get involved with that, and as I did that, and as me and my friends were playing for people and so forth, I remember my mom saying to me one time, hey, like one of your friend's parents came to me and thanked me for whatever I did to raise you, to be doing this, because, the way you guys are performing and just coming out and just, putting a smile on everybody's faces is helping me move forward from what happened then. Right. And so I got to take part in this really beautiful, firsthand experience in healing a community that had been traumatized by this event through the arts. And
if I may interject, is that how Code Blue and Together came about?
That was the root of that was, or that was rooted in that experience, I guess, that I sought those experiences out. But actually, that was unrelated to that event. That was the pandemic. So that was me just noticing that, oh, hey, there's a lot of suffering around, and this was my whole thing, is like healing suffering and so forth. So I should do something. And so I started to go talk to nurses and things like that. And so Code Blue was kind of my first start into that, and that was based off of one of my interviews with a nurse. And a Code Blue is like a cardiac arrest, and so it was kind of a musical retelling of his first death on the job, basically, which was a cardiac arrest. And I basically just followed the transcript of what he told me. There's kind of a narrative arc in the piece, and if I were to show you the transcript, you'd be like, oh yeah, the first part is kind of the literal description, and then the second part is kind of the effect it had on him afterwards. And the kind of nuance of it too, because in some ways it was really traumatizing, but then in other ways it kind of gave him a different appreciation for life. And so, those emotions are really complex, right? And then Together is kind of a step further, where it's that interview plus two others that I then kind of put into this like live interactive recording space. Not recording space, just live interactive space, where we had 3 speakers, and each one had their interview excerpt from like that particular person, and they had their own instrument assigned to it that was playing along to that interview at that interview's pace. But I wrote it such that the instruments were themselves kind of playing in concert with each other. So the idea was to kind of create a sense when you're in the room and you have to listen to it with other people at other speakers, right? And the idea was to kind of create a sense of the pandemic is kind of interesting because everyone has their own story, but we are all somehow connected in a really rare way by a universally shared suffering, right? And so the title Together was, as corny as it sounds to say like that, we've all been through this together,
right?
And that togetherness can kind of make you feel a bit more supported by even if your experience was different from somebody else's, that you're not the only one who had a rough experience,
So let me ask you this. You've been into it 5 years. You've got about 14 titles out right now as far as video games are concerned?
I believe 18.
18
now. Yeah.
Yeah. What are some titles that maybe I might be familiar with where I can go back to and maybe kind of listen to your work?
I think
the most popular.
First one, I think the first one that I would point you to is Goob and Balloons. I think it is our most popular one, and I think it's also
is that out already? Because I saw in your profile that it was coming in September.
Oh, that might be out of date.
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. Sometimes my personal, if that's my LinkedIn profile, I do have to update that. I've kind of put so much focus on the company media that sometimes some of my own stuff falls through the cracks.
And what platform does?
So Goob and Balloons is on PC, it's on Xbox, it's on Nintendo Switch, and it's on PlayStation.
Oh, okay.
So that's the one where we got to all those different platforms, and so that was a big milestone for us. And I think that one's a good, great to listen to because we were very lucky to find I think we clicked particularly with this development team, and they gave us a lot of latitude in terms of what we were able to do with the score. And so there's some really interesting things that happened there that I'm especially proud of, I guess. We have in the final boss, for example, actually in all the bosses, there's instrumental solos, but those solos are instead of just being part of the recording, part of the loop as you would normally do it, they're actually playing separately, and they're kind of built out of these little chunks that we recorded with instrumentalists. And so you have kind of brand new solos every time you play. And so it's kind of like there's real improvisation happening in the score.
Just like jazz.
Just like jazz, exactly. So it all comes back, even if I never did become a jazz musician, it's always been there, and stuff like that. I like also the main menu kind of follows your progress. So as you progress through the stages, whenever you go back to the main menu, the music is different depending on where you are.
Right.
And so it kind of gives everything a lot more narrative continuity, and so stuff like that I just think makes the game, kind of elevates the game to a new level. And so that's one that I would suggest. I mentioned Time Turned earlier. That one is, I think, cool. Also one of our more popular ones, but I think also cool because the main gameplay mechanic there is you're solving these puzzles, and you're trying to get kind of to the next room. But you have to use you have the ability to kind of stop and rewind time, and you have like a little video scrubber, and so you play and that kind of extends, and then you can scrub along the gameplay you just did.
Mm.
And then the main kind of mechanic is you have to do one thing and then stop time, and then you can create a clone of yourself from that timeline that does whatever you did in that timeline, and you're now in a new timeline doing a different thing, and you have kind of a limited amount of clones and stuff like that. And so the audio system to get that to work, to get that playback, to rewind what you just played accurately, was really quite complex, because you have to, normally sounds are triggered at the beginning, like, there's an animation and you put a little flag at the beginning of the animation, and that triggers, the sound to go along with it, but it might not end at the same time as the animation. In fact, it normally carries over a little further because there's a reverb tail and things like that. So we had to make sure that before the animation started on the way back, the sound started at the correct time so that it would link up with that start time of the animation, and that would be accurate, forwards and backwards and at different speeds. And so that system ended up working super well, and I'm really proud of it. And so that's another game that I would recommend checking out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm a huge fan of video games, and I think a good sound score and a good audio experience allows you to immerse yourself into that whole experience, which is why I love some of those titles that I talked to you about before we started recording.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you see the business growing into in the next 2 years? Do you have any exciting goals or growth plans in mind?
Yeah. I think on one hand, we do just have some exciting projects coming up. So we're working on Iconic Arts, who did Good Balloons. We're working on their next game called Tongue Traveler. Actually, it's Tongue Traveler: A Real Adventure.
Okay.
They're into their long titles. But yeah, that's a cool, I think, quite unique puzzle game that we've already written some music for, and I'm very much looking forward to folks hearing that. And we have some other similar projects in the works that I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say anything about just yet. So
you can tell me, but then you got to kill me.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I think our goal moving forward is to, kind of continue. Our main focus right now is what I was talking about before of being able to kind of extend our trustworthiness past the first conversation with us, basically,
right?
And to kind of really show that in everything we do, and so we're trying more and more. I think when we started the company, we kind of erroneously thought that we had to come across, or that showing professionalism meant, everything being super, I don't know, minimalist or clean cut, or like, suit and tie. And so now we're kind of peeling back those layers to kind of create a new image that we hope is going to be more true to the things that, we talked about just now, about, my experience with the arts and what I think they can do. And obviously Zach and Anna hold very similar views. That's why we started working together. And so, we want those to be more front and center. And so we're starting to kind of try to reach the sort of people that are trying to do something unique or something new or something innovative, whether it be in a narrative aspect or whether it be in a sort of gameplay aspect. So um, a game that we worked on that came out recently called Pig and Chicken is a good example of that kind of narrative uniqueness, I guess, because it's a game about a pig that can fly, but then she loses her wings and she goes on this journey with her friend Chicken to get her wings back. And it's kind of a fable storytelling, a story kind of thing. But it's if not an allegory, heavily inspired by the director's real world experience with his dad, who kind of near the beginning of the process of that game contracted some sort of disease. I actually don't know which one, but was paralyzed from the neck down. And the game is really about the struggles of how he saw his parents struggle through companionship in light of a situation like that, and struggle through the fatigue of caretaking or the frustration of being the one that's taken care of and not being able to do the things you used to, or I guess help when you see the other person being tired and all of that. And so those are the sorts of stories that we'd like to tell. And so we're kind of trying to push all of our company kind of more and more in that direction, and try and kind of reach those kinds of developers.
Awesome. Well, Tomas, it's been great learning about Svidanza Audio and your journey and how it started, where it's at, and where it's going. To our listeners that want to follow you or reach out to you, how would they do that?
Well, they can reach out to me at my LinkedIn, which I believe is in the links that I provided. And we also have, as I mentioned, lots of social media for Svidanza, and you can find us on Instagram, you can find us on Facebook, you can find us on LinkedIn again, you can find us on Blue Sky, I believe, and TikTok. And aside from that, you can always just email me directly at T Ortola-Stange at svidanzaaudio.com. Yeah, please do.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Tomas, thank you once again for joining us and sharing your story. We certainly wish you great success. I think the future looks very bright for you and in the industry that you're in. To our listeners, if you've enjoyed this spotlight, be sure to tune in, subscribe for more inspiring business spotlights. Until next time, I'm Irv Cruz, and we'll see you on the next Credit Bank Small Business Spotlight.
If you enjoyed this video, click here to watch another exciting episode.